Make a motion to exit executive session, return to public session. May I have a first, please? Trustee Wallace, second, Trustee Bishop. Comments or questions? All in favor? Thank you. We'd like to welcome Principal Scott Richards.
All right, we'll call it double technical difficulties. I'm just going to turn that off. My next slide, which you can't see, just use your imagination, is of students in our SEL room. That room has been set up and opened up so that there are really little to no furniture in the room. The students are able to sit in a circle. They're able to have conversations. They also use what's called the Hug-A-Planet, which you can see being used in the picture to the left. When they have the Hug-A-Planet, that's when they're able to talk. And then you'll see in the other picture, there's students with their thumbs up. That means that they have a thought that they would like to share. And it's just a really nice way for kids to be involved in the conversation if they want to, and also maybe take a step back and not be in the conversation if they're not comfortable in that moment. When I was watching this group, there were a few students that weren't sharing, and then they kind of saw what other kids were saying, and then the thumbs went up and they started to participate. And here they were just sharing what they were looking forward to. It's a good way for the kids to get to learn more about each other and to really develop and build that classroom community. We also have some additional training coming up on the 19th. That's another thing that the district has done a really nice job of, is continuing that support for the teachers, for the students, and we really enjoy having the coach come in and work with us. I believe since you were here, we held a holiday sing-along with Miss Rose, our music teacher. She has almost every single third grade student involved in chorus this year, which is really remarkable. We were starting to see the numbers kind of start to go down, especially with COVID. It was difficult, so it's really great to see the kids come back and be excited about chorus. And in this event, we invited the parents into the building to do a sing-along with the students just before the holiday break. The turnout was tremendous. Figured I'd give you a couple of academic updates. There's a lot of things going on in the background. This year we've kind of, at the elementary level, said we're really focusing on math this year. We have a new math program. That's our main focus. And our teachers are doing that. They're focused. They're enjoying using the math program. But then on the other side, in ELA, we do have some things going on. So I figured I would just highlight a few of those. We recently received our new Teachers College reading units of study. They have been updated and modernized, if you would, and the teachers have jumped into it and are really excited to work with that. We also purchased Caden running record assessments, and that gives us the opportunity to kind of diagnose kids in the moment, where they're at, what they need. And coming out of COVID, we're seeing a lot of gaps and deficiencies, so having more tools to assess our students is super helpful as we go forward. Mystery books, we just put in a very nice order. I put it through my budget, and the district very kindly picked it up and paid for it, which I appreciated. But as we work with our TC coach and we try to get the excitement around the units of study built back up again, we're starting to see, oh, how can we do that? What do we need? We need more mystery books, because the kids really enjoy it when they're in the unit, but also just based upon their interests. So we put a nice order together for that. We also received our jump rope readers, which are decodable readers for K1. We were able to also purchase them for second grade as well, because we're seeing kids coming out of the pandemic with some phonics issues. So this gives our teachers just one more tool to help our students as well. We do have a TC training on the 23rd, and that will be online, remote. And her topics are basically going to take TC units of study, the running records, and the decodable readers, and work all three of those things into her training. Teachers are real excited about that. And PTA update. PTA has been busy, and I've got a couple members here, which is nice to see. They just finished up their holiday boutique, which was a really nice way for kids to come in and shop and buy low-cost gifts for their friends and families, actually just families, and that went very well. We've run the book fair. We currently have a playground fundraiser up and running, and I put a picture of a drawing of kind of what we're trying to do. So the center circle there is the Mobius. That's that ribbon-looking piece of equipment that's out there. That's already currently in place. We're looking to expand that area by double. We already have 2 balance beams to replace the 2 balance beams up on the hill, which the kids don't access anymore because we don't use that for recess. So we'll be able to add 2 balance beams there, and then also a climbing piece as well. So that's just going to expand that area, make it more of a point of interest. And then phase 2 is to create a smaller version of the Mobius, the balance beams, and the climbing area for our younger students. The younger students go up on that Mobius, and then they're paralyzed once they get to the top in fear. So we would like to create a place that's a little bit more inviting for them. PTA is also planning a Winterfest, which I believe we started due to COVID so that we could have outdoor events. That was so successful that they said, you know what, let's just do it again. So we're looking forward to that. And in closing, the last event is our Sweetheart Breakfast, which is on Valentine's Day. It's been a few years since we've run that. It's just a nice event. The parents come in, have breakfast with their children. We get a tremendous turnout here. So it's going to be really, really nice and special to have that up and running again. And since my PTA is here, thank you. And hope you have a great meeting.
Thank you so much, Principal Richards. Does anyone have questions? Trustee Bishop?
Yes, Principal Richards, could you explain to us, if you can, what is the difference between the Caden running records and the Teachers College running records?
So I'm also receiving a lot of professional development on this as well, but really we're taking a look at it in more of the phonetics approach and trying to get more information, how we can dive into that deeper. And, you know, we're going to learn more, and I know the teachers are excited to use it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have questions for Principal Richards? No, thank you so much, and thanks for having us as always, and thank you so much to the PTA, because without the PTA, I think our elementary schools and Bennett would be much different environments, so thank you guys so much. The Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of December 20th, 2022. May I have a first, please? Trustee Taylor, second Trustee Bishop. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Noelle Crandell, would you like to give a report?
Yeah. Hello. So recently in student government, we brainstormed mental health activities for next week, as it is midterms week and many students are not very familiar with this. These activities are still waiting to be approved and formalized, but they are ideas such as crafts, music during passing periods, games during lunch, a scavenger hunt, and other fun activities like that. We also picked out student government sweatshirts, which is very exciting. And our first association meeting of student government is this Friday. Throughout the high school, the production of Chicago has begun rehearsing. The seniors hosted a successful snack and paint this past Sunday. Many sports teams have begun competing and are doing very well. Senior portraits have been submitted for the yearbook, which feels very surreal. And Science Olympiad competed in a mock competition this past weekend. The chess club is hosting a chess tournament this week, and Spanish club will be hosting a movie after school this Friday.
Thank you, Ms. Crandell. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Crandell? No? Thank you, Noelle, and please feel free to stay or leave as you'd like. The superintendent will report district news.
Good evening. So we have begun work on our district calendar for the 23-24 school year. Just saying that out loud sounds surreal. I would hope to have a draft to share with the board at the next meeting and be able to finalize it in February, hopefully. In looking at the calendar, we will benefit from the fact that 2024 is a leap year, so February has an additional day. And Rosh Hashanah begins in the evening of Friday, September 15th, so we would not close school for the observance of that holiday, but we will be aware that no events should be scheduled after school on that date to allow those people who do observe Rosh Hashanah to do that. The combination of these two situations does appear to be providing us with a slightly more flexibility than we have in the current year. One concern that we do have, though, is that the Regents exam schedule provides for them to be finished on Wednesday, June 26th. So that makes for planning graduation a bit of a concern. To hold graduation on Wednesday evening makes it difficult for families, but waiting until Friday, 2 days after the end, also also brings some challenges because people want to leave for their summer break. We will continue to discuss it with the high school principal, and he works very closely with his team, and I'm sure he will come up with a thoughtful recommendation. We have posted information about the work that our Ulster County Comptroller, March Gallagher, and the Citizens Commission for Digital Equity are doing to identify the areas in our county that are without access to broadband. Comptroller Gallagher is working diligently to prepare for funding opportunities by gathering all of this data proactively. If you or someone you know does not have access, please go to the digital map that she has posted and make sure that your situation is recorded accurately. We've posted the information on our website and on Facebook to try and help get the word out, but I would appreciate if everyone can look out for their fellow community members and make sure that everyone knows about this resource. The information needs to be submitted by Friday of this week to be included in her data. Mark your calendars for January 20th and join us for Community Night. The evening will be celebrating our community, honoring first responders, and supporting Ontario athletics. The day includes a free indoor tailgate for middle school and high school students being sponsored by the Booster Club. At 4:15, there will be a varsity girls basketball game and a modified wrestling match. At 5:45 will be a recognition of first responders and youth sports programs. At 6, there will be varsity wrestling, and at 6:30 will be a boys varsity basketball game. There will be concessions, raffles, and merchandise for sale from 4 until 7:30. I'd like to thank our Booster Club, our Athletic Council, and our Athletic Department for all the hard work and coordination that goes into an event like this, and I hope to see everyone there. But please also note, they have planned ahead. The snow date is the following Friday, January 27th. Good news in terms of civics. Ms. Hadley has worked hard in her role supporting our elementary students, and we received the following message today from Ms. Hadley. She wrote, "I am so excited to inform you that 6 Bennett 6th grade student leaders have been invited to present their Plastic Film 101 lesson to attendees at this upcoming Ashokan Center Youth Empowerment and Sustainability Summit. That is a global climate solution and leadership summit for young people who are ready to change their lives and their communities by working toward climate resilience. So they are scheduled for 2 back-to-back presentations in February. And then they will be invited to join the summit luncheon following their presentations, and then they will go back to their building by 2 p.m. So thank you to Ms. Hadley, and congratulations to our students. In terms of goals update, the shared decision-making team met last week and provided us with some feedback on the Bachman report. The Bennett constituents had questions about the timeline. The high school indicated that there's an understanding that something needs to happen, but it needs to be well planned. There was a recognition that there would be many positives in bringing 6th grade students into the middle school. It was noted by a parent, sorry, my eyes are dried up, that our stakeholders are also each individuals and will have concerns related to their individual circumstances, just to keep that in mind. Our Non-Teaching Supervisors Association was interested in finding out a timeline and noted that whatever the decision is, it needs to be implemented thoughtfully. Phoenicia had a little more robust feedback. They had concerns that we have just come out of the pandemic and that we just recovered from the reconfiguration from 2012. There was support potentially for moving 6th grade up, but not 5th grade. There's also concern for the community, and if only one of the K-3 buildings were to be closed, that it would create an adversarial relationship between the 2 communities. And this is not it's not a consistent summary. It's different feedback from different people within the Phoenicia community. It was also noted that 2 K-5 buildings would be okay, or make Bennett a K-4. Staying in the current configuration assumed to not be what will be the result. There were concerns related to space if we were to move to a central campus. There was a wonder as to whether we could put a pre-K in both Woodstock and Phoenicia. And there was a concern that if we do move to a central campus, that the current K-3 buildings be maintained appropriately for the students that are being served in them in the meantime. Our student rep noted that they felt that 5th grade students should not be in the middle school, but that 6th grade would be okay. So I think that some of these questions and concerns will certainly inform the work that the ad hoc committee will be doing with the World Cafes, and we will talk about that more during that section of the agenda.
Thank you, Superintendent McLaren. Does anyone have questions for the superintendent? Trustee Lynch.
Thank you, Superintendent McLaren. I just wanted to ask, this is a bit random, I recognize, but as one of the representatives of the elementary community, I wanted to just ask, as you're pulling the calendar together, to also look at the consecutive weeks of days off, consecutive weeks with a day off in the start of the school year, that first quarter to 2 quarters. When we went to parent-teacher conferences, and I've heard this from other parents as well, there was like an acknowledgement that we've had so many interruptions in that first quarter, because certainly there are holidays, but there was also superintendent conferences and other things happening. It's hard for young kids to find the routine that they need that's so critical in those early ages. And so I'd just like to ask that as you're looking at that calendar, to keep that in mind in that first two to 3 months.
We certainly will. I
Thank
think
you.
one of the things that we're also contemplating, we'd like to come in and in the first couple of days have multiple superintendent's conference days before we bring the kids in, so that it kind of jump starts our professional development and helps bring our staff back. And so much of what we do is required and not really professional development. It's being refreshed on the attorney updates and the legal updates and the bloodborne pathogens, and there are a lot of very required workshops. But one of our issues is that when BOCES starts, they only have in their calendar next year right now 1 superintendent's conference day. So then if we had 2, then our high school students going to BOCES programming would be a day behind. So then, we still want to get some of that professional development in at the beginning of the year. So it is a balance and a struggle, but thank you.
Any other questions for the superintendent? No? Okay. Does the board have any district news? District news from the Board of Education? No? You guys are oddly quiet tonight. Okay. So we're doing things a little differently. We're going to have the ad hoc committee report out each meeting under a separate, in a separate way, so that everyone has an opportunity to hear what they have to say. So I'm not sure who would like to do that. Trustee Bishop, Trustee Story, Trustee Raimondo. Okay.
I'll do it tonight, but I don't always have to do it. I'm willing to, but please feel free. So we just want to let everybody know that we met for 2.5 hours to discuss the next steps. We did that on January 4th. And this is the ad hoc committee, obviously, that's working on and discussing possibilities for the district's long-term plan that's in alignment with the board goal. In attendance at that meeting was me and Trustee Story and Trustee Raimondo, Stephanie Laffin, Amanda Allison, and Superintendent McLaren. And some of the things that we discussed were, first, amending the dates that we had decided on at our first meeting, because we wanted to allow for more time and a broader community outreach. The format that we're going to be using for our community gatherings is along the lines of a World Cafe. And you can Google that and get more information about what World Cafe looks like. It's a great format. So on January 31st, we'll be meeting with community representation. The snow date will be February 2nd. Our second meeting will be on February 28th, which will be a Zoom meeting. And the community will receive a link to attend that. And our third meeting will be on March 27th. And did we set a, okay, right, I don't have that. Okay, so the snow date for that, or the weather date, is March 29th. The location for our in-person meetings will be the middle school, high school cafeteria, and we'll be meeting from 6:30 till 8 o'clock. Childcare may be available if requested in advance by respondents on the survey. And so we've been working on developing a survey, and we developed, with the support of our BOCES communications staff, postcards, which I received mine today, was really excited about that. The postcards were mailed, and they and surveys will be distributed with specific reach out to town supervisors, emergency responders, PTA, booster clubs, and business owners, and more. The ad hoc team will meet again on January 20th at 1 p.m. at Central to review the responses, which we're hoping to have back by January 19th. And that's my report.
Thank you, Trustee Bishop. Do either Trustee Story or Trustee Armando have anything to add? No. Well, I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing. Superintendent McLaren.
I just wanted to note that, yes, the postcards started arriving in people's mailboxes today, and we were pleasantly surprised because we were told they would be mailed today. So we were very happy. So far, we've got about 9 responses on the survey. But in addition to the postcards, we sent out an all contacts email for all of our faculty and staff today. It will also go out on a shout point tomorrow, and our BOCES rep is doing a press release as well tomorrow. So we are really, really, really hoping that we're going to reach as many people as possible.
Do any members of the board have questions for the ad hoc committee? Odd, okay. Moving on, the board will acknowledge publicly heard comments from the last meeting by Neil Brownell. And public and students may comment on any agenda or non-agenda item. The board appreciates hearing from the public, including students, on any agenda or non-agenda item. Please understand that by our adopted parliamentary procedure, the board can engage in discussion or answer questions during public be heard. Please know that we hear you and take all of your comments into consideration. The board does reserve the right to correct any inaccuracies or misinformation during public be heard. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Be civil and do not name any particular individuals or promote any commercial ventures or products. People wishing to express individual student or personnel concerns can bring them to the superintendent's attention in private. Ms. Shands.
Is it on? I'm just gonna hold it because it's easier. Okay. Hi. So I just want to start off by saying that tonight there's a very important topic being discussed. It's item 10.02. I'm slightly disappointed that there was no social media posting about tonight's meeting. 10.02 is going to drastically change our community, whether you agree with it or not. And there are 5 parents here. With all that being said, I feel like a broken record. This is a hot topic, button issue that needs to be over communicated to the point of annoyance. I know you're doing your best. I acknowledge that. All the things that the ad hoc committee are doing are amazing. I watched the 12:06 and 12:20 meetings today on my lunch break. I scrolled through a lot of the 12:20, the 12:06 because it was 3 hours long. But this specific topic was not mentioned. I have a second grader going into third grader. She will be affected by this decision, no matter what it is. So with all that being said, our PTA got together via text message today and came up with some questions that I'm going to read, and I hope that during your discussion today, you can answer some of those questions. I've realized you're not going to be able to answer all of them, but if you can answer some of them, that would help us go and talk to our community. I repeat, the PTA wants to be your communicator. We are here for you. Whether we agree with you or not, we want to help you communicate to the district. Please give us that opportunity. So quickly, I know I have a minute left. It's just, we want to know the reasons and motives behind moving the 6th grade to the middle school. Is this part of the first steps into the redistricting plan? What is the timetable for implementing this plan? Is there space current in the middle school to accommodate the 6th graders, or are building modifications going to be needed? With the later start time proposal and research provided showing negative impacts on early rising for teens, why add an additional grade to the start at 7:35? What stakeholders have been part of the 6th grade moving to the middle school? Will the district be working with Morningside to help families with the transition? What are the anticipated class sizes? Will the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders be in class together? And can you please describe what the middle school curriculum is and how including the 6th grade changes that curriculum? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shands. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
There's just an issue of correction in this. In this hand, there it says 7:35. School day starts at 7:40, not 7:35. Am I correct? Let's just be totally accurate. So just to be accurate.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Wallace. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay. Item 10.01, Superintendent recommends acceptance of a donation totaling $30 in cash as a scholarship award for the graduating class. The superintendent recommends approval of the following donation, $30 from Scott Cornish. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second Trustee Wallace. Questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. All right. So, to clarify, item 10.02 is a board goal for this year and was discussed at length in the beginning of the year as a board goal. So this is kind of us working towards accomplishing our goals. This is something that's been talked about for a very long time on the Board of Education. And I don't know who wants to open the conversation. We're discussing moving the 6th grade to the middle school as part of our board goal that we set in September. Who wants to start? Trustee Lynch?
Thank you, Trustee Sherry. Yes, I have similar questions, and I would actually really be open to following Ms. Shand's line of questions here, these 10. I think that would be quite helpful for the community. I respect the fact that this conversation started in 2005, and thank you for sharing the context. There's plenty of information on the website for the community to look at. It's under the tab long-term planning. But maybe that's a great place to start, which is this a conversation that is part of the long-term plan? Or is this a conversation that is about a decision that's made outside of it? Because the board goal was about supporting a long-term district plan with several different things that we wanted to tackle within that plan, including the middle school. And so from my perspective, I feel that this is being discussed before we've had the input from the ad hoc committee and the World Cafes and all of those other.
If you go back and take a look at that goal, Sarah, I think it is written with a much different context. There is obviously a long-term plan that we're working on that's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
But the discussion about moving the 6th grade to the middle school has been ongoing for many years, and this Board of Education this year had looked at that goal as for September. So, and we put it into our board goals as such. It was not part of the long-term plan in that way. I mean, it is obviously part of a long-term plan in that it is something that the board and the administration and the district has talked about for a really long time. But it was not written into our board goals as such.
Well, we did, with all due respect, Trustee Sherry, we did say such as moving, we softened that language to include it. If you might want to look at the wording, but that was not my impression. My impression was that the first goal is about a long-term plan, and we would address such things as ... and there's a long list. So I just, for the record, that's how it was written, and that's how I understood it. So from my understanding as a trustee, it'd be really helpful to know, how does this fit into the long-term plan? And particularly around the timeline, given the fact that there may be other issues at stake, building utilization and other things that Ms. Shands also mentioned. So I'm just curious if we could think about the context of the discussion, like what are the other implications for this move?
Well, I think that our administrators are really ready to talk about it and to, kind of discuss the things that we've been talking about for years as a board, way before I was on the Board of Education. I think that it was recognized that this move had vast implications for the way that education is being handled for the sixth graders currently, and what it would mean for them to move forward into the middle school building, as well as better utilizing that building, which is part of our long-term plan, which is currently highly underutilized. But I'm going to let Superintendent McLaren start with her.
Sure. So I think some of these questions are great, and I think it's all part of the process. When we're talking about what the timeline is for implementing the plan of moving the sixth grade, that's really kind of what we're trying to determine. We're trying to put a pin in an end date so that we can then really start to flesh out the planning. And it is our intention to engage with all of the parents and with the faculty and the administrators and do it collaboratively. But until we know what the date is, it's not helpful to start that process if we're going to say, well, we're not sure when we're going to do it. We want to have some concrete timeline so that we can then really dig in and work on it. As Trustee Sherry said, there's certainly enough room to move sixth grade in. One grade is far smaller than the number of students who have left the building, so to speak. You know, we've in the past, since West Hurley closed in 2004, and we've maintained the same buildings we've lost 1,000 students district-wide. The high school used to be much, much bigger. So it's not really a question of whether the students will fit, but we absolutely want to plan for it and include the middle school faculty and the Bennett faculty and all the parents. You know, in my head, I believe certain things about how that will work, but I'm not the one who's going to be with the kids day in and day out. The teachers are. So I think it's really important that I don't want to answer questions about will 6th, 7th, and 8th graders be in class together. I don't believe they will. But that's really something that needs to be worked through with the faculties and the parents and the administrators. So that's kind of just my general kickoff. In terms of the educational benefits, I think Assistant Superintendent Laffin and Assistant Superintendent Allison are certainly capable of giving some ideas of that, but as Trustee Lynch said, there's a lot of information out there. We've certainly been talking about this for a long time. I think the shift in our district in 2012 was done as a way to sort of address the shifting population and the declining enrollment, but it was kind of a Band-Aid. And so we need to continue to look forward and to address those things. And we've had at least two different middle school steering committee, middle school planning committees over the past 15 years that have said the middle school, the way it is structured is not good for kids. We need to expand it. And there was a recommendation, I think the 2004-05 middle school steering committee really wanted it to be 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I don't think that anyone felt that that was really going to be viable. So, you know, this has definitely been a part of our district fabric, but we've never actually managed to solidify how to go about it and when to move forward. And I think it's really time. But we definitely want to engage with everybody and include parents and faculty and administrators in the planning process. But until we have a timeline set, it doesn't make sense to do that, because if we're talking with one set of parents and then it doesn't work for that class, then we've just wasted those parents' time and not engaged with the right people.
Thank you, Superintendent McLaren. Trustee Bishop, did you have something to add?
Yes. I just wanted to read the first sentence of our board goal number 1, which says, support the development of the district's long-term district-wide plan that addresses current challenges and opportunities that have already been identified, including declining enrollment, staff shortages, facilities needs, budget, student achievement, community impact, and the expansion of middle school to add 6th graders. So that was really clearly discussed, you know, when we were developing those goals. As part of the long-term plan that addresses current challenges and
That's
needs.
right. Yeah, as part of the long-term plan.
Trustee Wallace.
First of all, let me just say that these are really, as a journalist, I love your questions. I think they're really the who, what, why, where, when, and I was hoping that the first question, which is really critical, the most critical, arguably, if we could hear the top 3 pros for making this move and the top 3 cons. Let's start with the pros.
So I can certainly speak to some of the conversations that we've had at the cabinet level and with staff, and what research supports other models that are utilized as that support a 6-8 configuration. One of those items is continuity. A 6-8 staff will have more time to identify, assess, and implement supports and interventions. When students are only in a school for 2 years, they're either on their way in or on their way out when it comes to staff. Our middle school has a really specific identity, which I think is great. Our staff has maintained a very specific and separate identity from the high school, and I think that giving another year to work towards that is beneficial. Similarly, the student affiliation with the school and staff to build relationships in a really critical time in adolescent development, offering more time for those opportunities. And also, when it comes down to curriculum, it enhances the efficiency and effectiveness of curricular articulation and staff communication. New York State learning standards are grouped 6 through 8. They are in a cluster. So when you talk about the fluidity and the building of those standards, 6 through 8 are grouped together in a continuum. So academically, 6th grade is really seen as secondary content when it comes to the topics of learning.
What can I just follow up? What percentage, roughly, of the 6th grade students, or actually maybe the middle school students now, have IEPs? Because I would imagine having the 3 years of a student who may need extra supports would prove beneficial.
Well, I'm going to defer to Assistant Superintendent Allison on that. However, I do think I know the number, but I'm going to let her talk about that. But that's definitely a piece of it, of team working together and supporting through that middle school content.
So I can certainly get you the exact number for this week, but roughly district-wide, we're at about a 21% classification rate. So if you break that down, it's probably around that for that grade. I think in terms of special education, just to add on to what Assistant Superintendent Laffin indicated, is we tend to see a great deal of difficulty for our students with IEPs and even 504 plans when they need related services or additional supports coming into to 7th grade, because we're trying to play catch up, trying to get the electives in that we need for credits, because we don't have the space to necessarily have a technology lab or home and careers or have the staffing to provide that. So we're constantly trying to, I feel like, rob Peter to pay Paul in terms of being able to get everybody the services that they need, which then also limits our students from being able to participate in things like chorus and band or look at electives. another piece that I think is really important as we talk a lot about mental health and social emotional learning is the research that indicates for students that the transition to middle school in general is anxiety provoking. When you add puberty into that, it's like a double whammy. So a lot of the research has indicated that it's important to try and create that transition prior to the onset or the heat of puberty, because we're just trying to support our students. Transitions in general, multiple transitions are also just don't produce any good mental health support effects for students or academic growth. So again, talking to that culture and that continuity of a caring school community is super important, especially at the adolescent time of development.
So I would just ask if I could ask for clarification. Something that Assistant Superintendent Lavin said was that NICED is grouping 6 to 8 academically, and then Assistant Superintendent Allison, I heard you say that you're playing catch up. I assume that those two things are related, and I'm wondering if you could give us a little more clarity on what you mean by grouping academically, what that looks like, and what the students are expected to accomplish in those 3 years, and how being split between two different buildings can impact that, because I think that's something that everyone needs to understand.
Sure. I mean, there are certainly challenges. So there's the issue of classes, things like technology, home, and careers. That is a separate issue from standards. Those are requirements of exposure, things that middle school students are required to take. Right, it's 2 years. So the idea that we could spread out experiences like languages, technology, home and careers, music, art, have more time to access those and have more flexibility as you develop the schedule, maybe more AIS support classes that's not a special ed support, that's a support for any student, just general reading support, all kinds of support that you can spread out in a different way when you're looking at a schedule like in that way. When I speak about how New York State groups the standards, that's simply the standards progression. So whether you pick math or ELA, science or social studies, it's just the fluidity or the commonness that's between certain grade levels. And it's of benefit to have the teachers who are working on those transitions together to be able to have, we certainly strive to have K-12 fluid curriculum, but it's difficult when you're in different buildings, working different schedules. It's a challenge.
Thank you. Ms. Allison, do you have anything to add to that?
And just that, as Assistant Superintendent Lappin says, it does allow us to really focus on vertical and horizontal alignment within our grades, which allows us then to make sure that we're seeing progressive student success and that there's constant collaboration so that we can be supporting students and monitoring for progress and growth.
So I would I'm sorry, go ahead, Trustee Lynch.
Yeah, sorry, just along the same lines, Trustee Sherry, sorry to interrupt. Just for clarification, is the reason then that we can't meet the SED standards for 6 through 8 as a group because they're not in the same building? Is that I'm not sure I understand that. Is there like team teaching or something that's happening that I'm missing? Help me understand why we can't start the curriculum in 6th grade.
We
regardless
do.
Of where
We
they
are meeting that.
Okay.
It's
yeah,
just
okay.
The ability to do it in a more cohesive, with more communication, things like PLCs, things like co-teaching teams. Those things are occurring, and they are certainly addressing the standards under a current configuration. But it's the idea that the communication, the work, the support of the students would be more cohesive. The secondary schedule and the elementary schedule is different. The contractual obligations of the different buildings are different, and it's a very, very different setup when it allows for time for them to work collaboratively and together.
I just wanted to reiterate, I think it's so important to recognize the opportunity that our students would have when sixth grade comes up to the middle school in terms of that exposure to home and careers and technology and languages, and then being able to actually have any kind of breathing room in their schedule, because right now, just to get all of the requirements in where other districts have 3 or 4 years to do that, our students have 2 years to do it, and they do not have a second to breathe. They do not have opportunity for study hall. They do not have the extra support that they could have. And it's really difficult on them.
Trustee Bishop and then Trustee Wallace.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. And in my experience in the district, it was notable that students with IEPs in particular would often not be able to take a foreign language, and which could really impact their ability to apply to certain colleges later on in their school career, because they would have to take a foreign language and then were not able to get the actual special classes or special education supports that they needed because of the intensity of having to take all of those middle school courses in just 2 years instead of 3.
Trustee Wallace.
On question 8, what are the anticipated class sizes? Is there a thought that the 3-year middle school will change class sizes in any way?
You really couldn't work that up until you knew which class we were dealing with, so which class sizes. And whenever we decide a date of moving forward, we'll work with the staff at the principal of the middle school to develop the schedule and determine those class sizes. So, it's a hypothetical answer until we know what the start date would be and what our classes would be. I would not anticipate a significantly larger classes in any way, but again, until you run the numbers and set up the schedule, you don't know that. A secondary schedule is different than an elementary schedule.
Trustee Story.
Also, some of this stuff for some of the newer board members don't know, but the administrators are already working on our secondary schedule for next year, the master schedule for the high school and junior high. So this also all plans into, they have to know, are they getting it, the sixth graders, why we have to make this decision soon than later, because our administrators and our need to have time in order to plan this stuff, to go through everything that we need to do. And I believe there's also a requirement from SED that we are required to do this, I don't remember the date, by March 31st, I want to say. But there is reasons why we've been discussing this, and I will say firsthand, I had a student, my child, one of them was special ed and could never play an instrument because he needed services, and when he was in middle school he wouldn't have been able to do anything because his services took up the periods, because we're cramming we're cramming 3 years of curriculum in a 2-year curriculum in 2 years, which isn't fair to our students. We're all about equity here. We need to be equitable for our special ed students too.
Well, I think that's the overarching point and why the Board of Education started looking at this a really long time ago. And it's something that I don't think we should lose sight of, which is that the current configuration forces the district to provide our 7th and 8th graders with all of the things that they should have had in 6th through 8. So the things that are required by New York State that the students have to have in order to move from 8th grade to 9th grade in our district happen in 2 years. In the majority of districts across New York State, that happens in 3 years. And I think that's really the point. And because we have a district that has a fairly large number of students who have IEPs, the impact on them is tremendous. And I don't think it can be discounted. So, my understanding of why this came before the board quite a few years ago was for that reason, because we are a district that has quite a few IEPs, more than others in our area. And those students are really being given a disservice by kind of cramming all of those requirements into 7th and 8th grade. Trustee Wallace?
Of the other middle schools in our county, how many of them are 7 and 8 configurations, and how many are 3-year configurations?
I know that in looking at the 2 different times that this district has looked at this issue, that there was a lot of time that was spent canvassing, and a good portion of the districts in this area have either 5 to 8 or 6 to 8 buildings. And that is pretty consistent, I think, across most of New York State, is I believe what you guys had found. I was not here, but I believe you guys had found in your last presentations.
To my knowledge, the only district that doesn't have a 5 or 6 through 8 middle school may be Saugerties, but they don't have a middle school. They actually still have a junior high school. So they have a 7, 9, and 10, 12, which is very old model.
Right, but what you're telling me is that, as far as you know, no other school has a 7th and 8th configuration, and all of the other
Not
schools
locally.
in the county have 3-year
Or 4. Kingston has a 5-8 middle school.
Minimum. Just to be clear.
Does anyone else have questions for the assistant superintendents or for the superintendent, or thoughts, questions? Trustee Taylor?
Just a question. If I know you don't have the time frame of it, when do you think you'll have a time frame? Is it all on the ad hoc committee, or is it something else?
I think that is a full board decision. And from our perspective, we could move forward and plan for September of 2023 or September of 2024.
So if we wanted to go with September start, the next September, when do you need us to decide so that you can properly plan and implement?
At the very latest, at the next board meeting.
Okay.
As of right now, there are annual reviews being held, and as Trustee Story said, there is scheduling happening at the secondary, so the sooner the better.
Trustee Sherry?
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee.
Superintendent McLaren, I absolutely respect that, and we'll do it. But I just want to better understand, how would we then know what happens to the current 3rd and 4th grades? Because they would then be in a school by themselves at Bennett if the 5th and 6th moved up. Like, how does that work? If No, I'm saying
5th has never been on the
right.
the
But if you
thing.
moved in September of 23, the
Okay.
current 5th grade class is going into 6th grade. They are both going to the middle school in September. What happens to the current 4th grade?
I don't understand your reasoning.
So that would end up being part of the rest of the long-term planning in terms
But if
of
we're not, if we
what
haven't
we're
developed,
doing.
so we would have to, that's what I'm talking about, the alignment of the timing with the long-term plan. If we make a decision to move 6th grade into the middle school in September of 23 or September of 24, and we don't have a plan, a long-term plan for the rest of the configuration, what happens to that class that is left at Bennett by themselves?
Well, there would be 2.
Right now, we have 2 classes at the middle school by themselves.
Right.
So it would be 2 classes that would be at Bennett. There wouldn't be a time when Bennett only had 1 class of children in it. It would be 2 classes.
Right, that's what I'm saying. What would happen to that 3rd and 4th grade? Currently 3rd and 4th grade are going to be in 4th and 5th. Is the suggestion then that Bennett would only have 2 grades?
But you're always going to have 2nd grade moving up to 3rd and 3rd to 4th. So isn't there always going to be a 4th, a 3rd? Like, I don't understand.
No.
4th and 5th.
Right now, Bennett is just 3rd, 4th, and it's just 4th, 5th, and 6th grade.
Right.
So let's just say we move up 5th and 6th next year to the middle school because
Okay.
they're going into 6th and 7th, respectively. right? So now you would have the current 3rd and 4th grade at Bennett. You'd have
Okay.
2 grades.
And then, but we shouldn't hinder one plan because you're afraid of another plan. Like, if it's right for the children to move
Or
up
we
to
could just
6th,
do it all at one time. I guess that's what I'm advocating
I don't
for.
know. I don't
versus
know if
making
it's
multiple
appropriate
changes.
to do. That seems like too much. Like, one plan is too little, and the other one is too much. So I'm not saying for or against moving 6th grade up, but
No.
we have to do, whatever we do, we have to do it in stages. And ideally, the first plan looks to be move the 6th grade up. Even if we don't redistrict, even if we don't do any other plans, from what we're hearing, it is right for the children to be 6, 7, and 8. Even if that's the only thing we ever do,
With
it
all due
sounds like
respect,
that's appropriate.
But with all due respect, that could be several changes for the same class.
And 10 years ago, my children went K through 1, and then 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4. We've been having this discussion for over 10 years.
So let's not repeat the same mistakes.
Yeah, so let's honestly, let's finally make a decision. Like, we've been putting around with this
Yeah.
stuff forever, and we're like, it's all about hurt feelings, and it's like little patches here and there, and I was one of the ones that was very upset with the original plan. But we have to decide. Like, instead of like every time a new board member comes in, we make a new thing, we have to get a plan that's right for everybody and stick with it.
But
And I would just say that there is no plan that's right for everybody. No matter what we do, no matter what we do or the board after us or the board before us does, there is no plan that is right for everyone.
I do have to
There
say,
will-
I just wanna
making
say
a
that's-
fiscally sound district that can
Right, yeah.
go with the times and not keep using the same footprint
well,
I
or
agree. I
shrinking
agree with
is
you,
not
Christy. I do.
appropriate.
I absolutely agree
I don't,
with you.
I don't think it's a question of money. I think it's a question of having 3 years instead of 2 years for middle school students who are stressed. I have one, and especially the 21% of kids with an IEP, to be able to spend those 3 years in the same building with the same teachers, assessing them, working with them, improving their lives and improving their futures seems to be a no-brainer to me.
Thank you, Trustee Wallace. I mean, I think that we're talking about a lot of different things here, but I also would encourage everyone to go onto the website and look at the information that's there, that's been building for a really long time. And one thing that we cannot lose sight of is that in the last 10 years, we've lost over 1,000 students. That is not insignificant, and a big part of our job is fiduciary. So, we're looking at how do we manage for such an incredible loss, and how do we manage in a way that is the best for the students with the information that we have.
And can I just make one point? I just want to be clear. I think you've all made sound judgments, and this might be very well the best way to go. I will say there is a Duke study on our own website that says it's very detrimental to sixth graders in terms of their own mental health. So I want to make sure that we all understand, as we're talking about IEPs and mental health issues, we have the same ratios of kids with IEPs and mental health issues in the 3rd and 4th grade who are now going through a potential transition very quickly without much notice.
I believe that was a 1999 study that looked at 5th grade and not just 6th grade.
No, it's a Duke study. I can send you the link. I just read it this morning. But the point that I'm trying to make is not about whether this is the wrong decision. I'm not saying it is. It very well may be. I just think it needs to be done in the context of the long-term plan so that families know what to expect and to be able to make those transitions accordingly in due time with due input from the very well-intentioned work that our ad hoc committee is leading.
If
right now they have not been consulted. The PTA didn't know about this.
Well, they would have known it if they had read the long-term plan. I mean,
but they didn't know the timeline, David. They did not know the timeline that their own children could be going to the middle school next year.
We don't know
September.
the timeline, is what we've
Yeah,
been saying.
there's no
We don't know the
timeline, Sarah.
timeline.
But we
I
just
mean,
said
I
it
just
could
wanna-
be as soon as
Trustee
September,
Lynch.
right?
Potentially.
Right,
Okay.
potentially. So we need time to make sure families are well read
How
into the
much
decision.
time do you think is appropriate? another year, another 2, another 5?
I would like it to go, my suggestion would be that we do it with the long-term plan and make one change for all families at the same time.
So if we went with the potential long-term plan of say a central district, do you want everything to happen exactly the same time on the next September and think that that is going to work out well for everybody and potentially not be detrimental to every single grade?
Well, to be clear, we're not talking about
No,
the
like worst
long-term
case scenario,
plan
like
next year.
worst thing that could ever happen with like everybody's fears. Like I don't understand the reasoning of not having a step. Like so take this out of take
not
this
a
out of the
fear.
long-term plan. This is good for the children now.
Yeah, they seem independent.
Okay, trustee Story.
I think Trustee Lynch is getting caught up on the fact that this is it's in the same goal, but it's 2 separate things. The long-term plan is different than moving the 6th grade up, and I think that's where the sticking point is with you. They are two separate things. 6th grade has nothing to do with our long-term plan. Moving 6th grade up is so we could be equitable for all our students.
Okay, well, there's a host of things we need to figure out if we're going to move that 6th grade up, including staff time, building utilization, modified sports, the music program.
Trustee Lynch.
There's several things.
I just want
right?
to. I just need to
So-
correct you for one. That is not something that the Board of Education actually needs to figure out. That is why we have a central administration
I
staff. So
appreciate
that is
that.
not our job.
No, but I appreciate that. But we were saying, Ms. McLaren was saying that she wants the input from all of those families to make, and the staff and the teachers to make those decisions.
To make the decisions about implementation.
Yes.
To not make the decision about whether or not we're moving the 6th grade. So
Right.
just to be perfectly clear about that.
Yes.
So, Trustee Wallace, did you have something? You had your hand up.
No.
Okay. Trustee Story? Trustee Taylor?
So that we don't keep going round and round. Is there a way we can set a date on when to decide and have it a hard date, like this is what we're doing? For us to vote, I should say. Is it the next board meeting so that we do have enough time for her to implement whatever she needs to?
Well, I would put it this way. If we do not make a decision by the next board meeting, then this is not happening for September. So I think we need to be really clear about that. If, we can, the other part, guys, is that this conversation needs to happen publicly. So this is not a conversation for us to be having amongst ourselves. This is a public conversation. I would suggest that we plan for a vote for the next board meeting and give the public the time to come, as Ms. Shand said. Make sure that it's a very public conversation, that anyone who wants to give input can give input, pro or con, and that we plan to hold a vote at the next meeting, and that vote would only be as to whether or not we're moving forward in September. Are we in agreement? Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
And I would like to see this really publicly, put out there. I want to make sure that we get the information to the PTAs, and that they're personally invited, and that educators and members of the community all have the opportunity to come to the meeting and let their feelings be heard either way.
But
Trustee Wallace?
I just do want to clarify one point, because there was am I correct that if we were to decide to move forward in the next board meeting, do you feel confident that the various issues that have been raised, for instance, sports and modified sports and language and these things, do you feel confident that you could, if you got a decision next board meeting, that you'd be able to move forward?
I believe we would be able to move forward and work with everyone and get the issues worked out. And if it's next September, we will make that happen and make it a really positive experience for the kids. If it's the following September, we will also do that. Our priority will remain the students.
So I think that we've answered a lot of the questions on here, but I would also ask that we come prepared to answer any questions that are on this list that we may not have addressed. And if there are more questions that the PTA wants to gather between now and then, and reaching out to the Bennett PTA, to make sure that we're prepared to answer those questions at the next meeting. I have not heard from Trustee Raimondo or Trustee Bishop. Do you guys have anything that you wanted to add?
I'm just going to reiterate that I believe that once we can get together with the stakeholder groups for our long-term planning at our World Cafes, that we're going to have a lot more clarity, which unfortunately, you know, our first one is January 31st, so it's going to be a lot of gathering of information and sharing as quickly as we can and regrouping. But, you know, we're trying to meet a timeline and be consistent and follow through with what we said we were going to do when we came here. So that's all I can say.
Trustee Bishop. One question I would like, you know, I'll do it as an RFI, but in relation to this, I would like to know at which period within the district, in moving through the district, we lose the most students to home education, Sudbury, and the Woodstock Day School. At what point do we see that drop off? If we could do that as an RFI, that would be great. Okay, anybody else? No? Trustee?
Just a point, I just happened to look at the date, so we actually are at Bennett next week, or in the next meeting in 2 weeks. So also maybe it would be helpful to hear from the Bennett School about what how they're managing this, or what they would want to manage, or questions they might have, I guess.
That's really not in the board's purview of it. This is, the board makes the decision, and the administration does the work. That's how we give the direction to the superintendent, and that's how it is. But
I understand. I guess from my perspective, the way I make decisions is to have more context, so it would be helpful. I wasn't here in 2005. I'd love to know more about what's special about Bennett and what we would be losing if we are to approve the timeline for that. That's all I'm asking.
Well, what I would ask, Sarah, is that if you have specific questions that you would like to be answered, you know, from the Bennett staff in some way, but all of those questions need to come through our administrators and not through the Board of Education. So if anyone has questions that they would like to have answered at the next meeting, please make sure that they get to Superintendent McLaren to make sure that they're there, as well as these questions and as well as any other questions that come through the PTAs or any members of the community prior to that meeting, so that we can be sure to have answers for them and for everyone at that meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Sherry.
Anyone else? Item 10.03, sixth grade teaching assignment for Algebra 1A intensive. The board hereby approves the creation of a sixth teaching assignment for Algebra 1A intensive. May I have a first, please? Trustee Bishop, second Trustee Raimondo. Questions or comments? Go ahead, Trustee Stans.
rationale for adding this at this point?
So what we are tending to see right now is that I think one of the effects that we're seeing from the pandemic and the fact that students have not had regents waived, especially in the area of math, where there is a very strong scope and sequence in terms of what kids are working on for their regents exam, is that we are seeing more students that are needing a higher level of support. And so we're trying to accommodate that by also making sure that we can keep those class sizes at a smaller ratio so that we can provide the support that students need.
If we do this, would that let the kids get more math help after school? Would that help? That has nothing to do with anything. All right.
This is just about creating smaller class sizes during the day.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. Item 10.04, the Board of Education, with the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the Memorandum of Agreement 01102-023 between the Ontario Central School District and the Ontario Non-Teaching Employees Association. May I have a first, please? Trustee Wallace, second Trustee Bishop. Questions or comments? Trustee Story? No? Okay. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Do you guys want to take a break, or can we keep going? Okay. Yeah. 12.01, the Board of Education hereby approves the updated appointment of the Deputy District Treasurer to Ms. Kimberly Cole. May I have a first, please? Trustee Wallace, second Trustee Raimondo. Questions or comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. The board hereby approves item numbers 13.02 to 13.04. On item 13.02, the second item needs to be paid, changed to paid administrative leave. She did, okay. May I have a first? Trustee Bishop, sorry, Trustee Story. Questions or comments? All in favor? Schedule you. Oh, schedule you. Ms. Taylor.
Everything is in order on the Schedule U.
Thank you. Okay. Questions or comments? No? All in favor? That's unanimous. And congratulations to Ms. Berger, who's with us tonight. We look forward to having you. Okay, item 14.01. The board hereby approves items number 14.02 to 14.06. May I have a first, please? Trustee Raimondo, second. Trustee Bishop. Questions or comments? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any other committee reports other than the ad hoc? No? Okay. Old business. Who's got old business? Trustee Wallace?
I saw that some action had been taken regarding, safer, in my opinion, football helmets. I wanted to thank you personally, and here's why. I'm the son of a high school football player who played at a high level and had dementia as an older man and died with dementia. And I think he had a different type of helmet, and he played both ways. He went offense and defense. I was also a football player in junior high when we had it. And my dad probably wore leather helmets. So I know that what happens and can take ultimately a real big toll. So anything we can do to make our football players a touch safer potentially and avoid one concussion, one head injury, one potential dementia case in their future, I think is a great decision. I commend you.
Thank you, Trustee Wallace. Anybody else? Trustee Bishop?
I'm not sure if this is old business, new business, or a request for information, but I just thought of this recently. Right before the pandemic, we were considering bringing in, and we met with the Ulster Literacy Group that does English instruction for adults. And I was just in a meeting yesterday with a group of people that supports immigrants. And, one of the biggest issues that they're confronting in finding employment is being able to speak English. And it's a real problem for them. And we had discussed the possibility of bringing the Ulster Literacy Group in, and and we talked about it. I just can't remember. Well, first of all, I know why it ended. It ended because of the pandemic. But I can't remember where we were with conversations with the school board, and I know we were debating whether it was something that the district was funding, could fund or not fund, or whatever. I'd love to kind of bring that back to life, at least the discussion.
Definitely. I do remember that was something that we were passionate about in trying to assist our families, and I think funding was a question, but I think the literacy group was trying to find a way to make it work.
Right, because I know that other districts, and I'm saying districts only because I know that like Kingston has a very robust program. I don't know if it's affiliated with the district or if it's affiliated through the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network. I'm not really sure how it's done.
Right.
But I'd love to explore
Bring that
that
back.
if we could.
I'll try and search through my old.
Okay, I will too. Thanks.
Any other old business? No? Okay, new business. Trustee Story?
New business for this board, but I'd like to suggest us, the district clerk, start making appointments for us to visit the schools. Usually we start visiting all the buildings, as the board, to go see what they do in our buildings, and as we're getting into January already, so we can spread them out over the time of doing our board tours for that. I've got some other RFIs, so
Anyone else? Okay, this is not an RFI, but I would like us to start looking at the work that Morningside has done and efficacy, as well as the work that Mr. Harkin is doing, efficacy, and our new relationship with Astor, in terms of what we're providing from a mental health perspective and SEL perspective, whether or not it's effective, whether we need to move in another direction, and how we can continue to try to be a district that provides the most support from an SEL perspective to our students. So is that something that my colleagues would also like to see discussed over the next couple of months? Yeah. Okay, so then I'd like to think about a reasonable timeline for that, to try to get some data, because I know we had talked about having Mr. Harkin come in and talk about his program. I'd love to have him do that and see what he thinks, and see if he thinks it's effective, and if not, why, and if so, why. Right, Mr. Harkin is receiving a stipend, and what is it called exactly? Media literacy, working with the older students to try to ensure that they are actually social media literate, and that they are savvy, and that they kind of better understand what the impact is for them and for their fellow students with the things that are happening on social media. And I'd love to hear from him as to whether or not he thinks that's working, and if so, why, and if not, why. And maybe from some students, if they're willing to talk about it. But maybe that's something that we can talk to Ms. Crandell about as well. But I would overall like to just kind of get a mental health snapshot of the district, where we're at, and what we want to be looking at for next year, to make sure that what we're doing is working, and where we're putting our resources is working, and what we could be doing better, because I think there's always room for improvement, and I think that the kids are maybe not feeling it in the way that we had hoped. I'd like to see that get improved. So that's my pitch to you guys. If you're open to it, I'd like to keep having that conversation. Anybody else with new business? RFIs for the superintendent. Trustee Story.
Trustee Taylor, about a month or so, sent out an email to us about the vape monitors, and we actually, I don't think she knows, we actually have those in our high school and middle school. So my question is, I'd like to take like 3 different weeks. I wrote down 9/19, 10/17, and 12/19, and just find out where the alarms are going off the most. What are we doing to do this? I know students have brought up to me about the vaping in the bathrooms, and it's a concern for the students. So I'd like to know, I don't want to know students' names, but are these students getting caught more than once? Are they, what kind of ramifications are happening? How are we doing to protect our students or educate our students on the harmful things about the vaping? And then another question that I've gotten was that we have rebranded the district for the new logo for our papers and stuff like that. Like what I've been asked of me from from different people is, can we get a solid athletic mascot? So when the teams go to buy, sweatshirts, because all the teams at the beginning of the season have always do like fundraisers or whatever where parents can buy the kids t-shirts, and I can go through I've got stuff from the Indians as me as being a student, and as I went through my kids' closets, I see the Indians, and then there's like 4 different versions of the Eagles. So if we could get one, if we could work on getting one so when things are bought in the future we look uniform. So that's a question that has been asked to me by parents.
Trustee Wallace.
I had previously asked about the cost if we were to do a 6 through 12 free lunch, what it would cost, and you were going to talk to the lawyer and find out if that isn't even an option.
I did send it to the lawyer when you asked, actually, and I have not gotten their response yet, so I will reach back out to him and remind him.
Much appreciated.
Yep.
Okay, any other RFIs for the superintendent? Okay. Our next meeting is January 24th at Bennett. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Valerie? May I have a second? Trustee Taylor. All in favor? Thank you.